Hi, this is Kaylin Salcedo, aka Mars Girl of Mars Girl Productions, and you're listening to Nerd to the Third Power.
Hello everybody and welcome again to Nerd of the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. And Kat's not here this week, so this is kind of a unique thing here. Usually, she's always here. She's been my rock. She's been always here, always present. And now I must go on without her. So this would be normally the point.
Her computer died. She didn't die.
Just so we're absolutely clear on this point.
I don't care. I bought the rights for Celine Dion, and fuck it, I want to use them.
Why would you inflict that on our listeners? There's kind of cruel and unusual stuff going on there.
Skyblaze, why do I do anything?
Oh, because you're a bastard, right? Okay.
Well,
Point taken.
The correct answer is because it amuses me, but you know, the same sentiment. As you can tell, our other co-host Skyblaze is here. As I see her nervously edging towards the door. So how have you been?
You are mistaken. I am nervously edging towards my sword back.
And in our correspondence corner, we have Brian and John. How are you guys doing?
I'm here, and John apparently can turn off his computer by hitting the mute button. I'm going to let the audience know what happens in the backstage, because it's hilarious.
And people think I'm crazy when I say I want to record the show live. Alright, but
God, mercy. Didn't we do that once? With alcohol?
Okay, we got a fun show for you tonight. Tonight, Brian and Skyblaze are going to tag team on a discussion on tabletop games and how there's been sort of an explosion of them in the last decade or so. So yeah, that's going to be fun. But of course, there is procedure to follow, so we're going to begin, as always, with Ask a Geek. And we got a bunch of questions here. First question is from Carl, and it is addressed to the Trekkies in the show, which I know that me and Skyblaze are one. Well, we're two, because I can do math.
You can count, too.
Anyway, his question is, what era of Star Trek is your favorite? And he's divided up into three epochs here. The first spanning, according to him, spans from the classic series to the first 3 seasons of TNG, when the stories were more fantastic and more kind of out there and not as grounded as they were later. Then from the 4th season of TNG all the way through to the end of Enterprise, where the show was more political and more hard fiction stories and longer story arcs. And then the third epic, which is the J.J. Abrams films. So, Skyblaze, why don't we start with you on this one?
Well, first of all, fuck the J.J. Abrams films. I still have difficulty believing that they've managed to actually go backwards in terms of equality and representation. But somehow they did. Because, yes, it was entirely necessary to see Carol Marcus in her underwear. Thank you for that. Okay, female characters in the original series wore skimpy outfits, but they weren't literally in their underwear, and it was the 60s! You can probably tell I have strong views on this subject. Also, I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I have been. It was my first fandom. I have been since I was very, very young. My favourite series is TNG, because I love the hopefulness of it and the kind of varied stories and the interesting characters and the reflections on us as a species and the things that we might encounter. I'm not a fan of Enterprise. I tried to watch Enterprise. I failed. So I suppose the one that overall I liked most was the original series to the first 3 seasons of TNG, but TNG got so much better after the third season, so that one's kind of hard.
I'm trying to think. The third season, was that the one that ended with the first part of Best of Both Worlds?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, so that's why he divided it there. Okay, because yeah, I've been kind of going through. You know, they've got all the Star Trek shows on Netflix now over here. Yay! So I've been kind of marathoning TNG, and I noticed there's a definite like. It's almost like flipping a switch when you go from season 3 to season 4. Like all the TOS style fantastical storytelling kind of just vanishes in favor of the character based arcs and the more political stories from season 4 onwards. So,
but I will fight anyone who suggests that the first 3 seasons did not have good stories.
Oh, I'm not saying.
My favorite story of all time is from season 2.
And what story was that?
Measure of a Man.
Ooh. the one I wrote my ethics final paper on.
Such a good story.
I know.
I was privileged enough at Worldcon a couple of years ago to actually meet the writer. I was like, oh, can I just tell you how much I adore that story? So I fangirled a little bit on that one.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. My favorite, and again, it comes from the second epic from season 4 of TNG on to the end of Enterprise. Was my absolute favorite story was I can't remember the proper episode title, but it was the one with Darmok and Jalat at Tanagra. Absolutely.
I think it's just called Darmok, but I could be wrong.
Is it? I'll have to look it up. But that's like my absolute favorite story
it's
out
so
of all
clever.
of TNG.
Is the thing. One of the things that pissed me off about things like Enterprise was that they completely abandoned this like idea of interesting things about alien races being something that we had to understand about ourselves as well as other people, and instead it was just like people with funny rubber foreheads. No. You can do better than this.
Okay. Brian and John, do you guys have any answers to this question?
I enjoy Star Trek.
That's a good answer. Honestly, I didn't watch Star Trek as much as, your average geek, much to my shame. I do actually have intentions to catch up on Netflix, whenever I catch up on everything else I'm supposed to catch up on Netflix. I swear watching TV and movies can be like a second or third job sometimes. But,
especially at the moment.
God, yeah, I know. Geek media is just...
I know. In some ways, it's awesome. In some ways, it's awesome. I mean, in most ways, it's awesome because, geek media.
Mm-hmm.
But in other ways, it's like, I have a pile of stuff to watch that reaches to the fucking moon.
Pretty much. And then I'm like, I'm gonna watch all this stuff someday. Rewatch is a favorite nostalgic show for like the 17th time instead.
Or watches a bunch of stuff on YouTube instead.
Yeah, there is that too. But
see, my problem is books. I've got like a pile of books I have to read that's been building up for like 10 years.
Don't even get me started on the books. I got books for days. Books for years. But Next Generation was the one that I was first really exposed to. I mean, I had some idea of the classic series growing up. I didn't really watch it a whole lot. I had a friend of mine, childhood friend, who was huge Trekkie, huge Next Gen Trekkie, so I got a lot of exposure to the Next Gen and its concepts through him. And I did see the odd episode here and there, so that's probably the one that just, in my own mind, is Star Trek to me, because it was the one that I had the most experience with. And I liked the Borg. I was pretty big on them. They were creepy and scary, and they looked cool. So I'm gonna go with Next Gen as my personal favorite.
Next question here comes from Sam, and it's for me. And he asked me, what am I most excited about for Fallout 4? And this is an easy question, just because it's one that the thing that I'm really looking forward to about Fallout 4 is basically the mod scene. I am really big into the Fallout New Vegas and Skyrim mod scenes, and just I don't make mods myself because I don't have that skill. I'm not that imaginative. But you go and you look on the mod Nexus and some of the stuff that people are adding into, Skyrim and Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3, and some of the stuff is just so imaginative. I mean, some of these things, they're almost entire games in and of themselves, and I love to see the creativity of the community and the kind of things that people come up with. And Fallout and Skyrim, to me, they're not even games anymore. They're custom cars. I'll reinstall Skyrim just to like tinker with it and see what I can make it do. And now we've got Fallout 4 coming out. This is going to be like, the new Cadillac of games for the community. I'm sure that everybody's just like salivating. It's like, oh God, what can we do? What can we add to this? How can we make it our own? And I love that the support that Bethesda has given historically to the mod community, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the community can come up with for Fallout 4. If you consider that cheating, then I have to name something that's actually in the game. I'd have to say the house building, because it's, I don't know, just again, it's one of those things. I can make it my own. I can put my own personal stamp on the game, and I really love games that do that. And to preempt the question I know is going to come from that, why don't I play stuff like Minecraft? See again my preceding comment on how I'm not that imaginative. And let's see here now. A question here comes from Ray, and he asks, Brian, I remember you disliking Man of Steel quite significantly, so I'm wondering what has changed your perception that you were excited for Batman vs. Superman?
I think there's some misconception, because I didn't outright hate Man of Steel. I had, my qualms for it, but I didn't outright hate it. I think everyone just assumes that now from the comic book community. But yeah, I had my issues, but at the end of the day, I was like, this is, in my mind, I was like, all right, this is still something kind of different and new or whatever have you. But yeah, I was maybe lukewarm, but I didn't hate Man of Steel. I might be thinking about every other person on you.
Well, no, because I remember being there for the Man of Steel discussion, and again, this might be just my own Swiss cheese brain playing tricks on me, but I remember you getting kind of pretty heated at some points, especially when you started talking about the collateral damage that was incurred in the movie.
Well, yeah, and I also remember where that came from, though. I had a personal experience about collateral damage and terrorist attacks because I lived in Washington D.C. during 9/11. That's that sucks. I don't like being reminded about that. But even then, I still hate the film for it or anything like that. And collateral damage and superhero things have existed since forever. Shit. Look at Power Rangers. Angel Grove got destroyed on a weekly basis.
Okay. All right. Okay. And he's got another question for you, which is which Spider-Man films do you enjoy more, Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield?
Probably between those two, it would be the Tobey Maguire films. Maybe not as much as 3. But just because I'm also a Sam Raimi biased fan, so it's like, oh, Sam Raimi's could make breakfast. I'm like, it's the greatest thing ever. That's.
I don't know, man.
I suddenly had this image in my head of Sam Raimi owning a Waffle House.
I don't know, man. I've seen the Evil Dead movies. I'm not sure I'd want to eat anything that Sam Raimi cooked.
That's true, but no. The thing with the Amazing Spider-Man series is that they took some really weird turns with it that made me kind of go, huh. I don't hate the films, but I definitely had a tilted head when I was watching them, going, that's weird. I'm not sure if I like that.
I like the Tobey Maguire films because they felt they felt like comic books in film form, whereas Amazing Spider-Man felt to me like Teenage Wasteland with superheroes. And this is something that Kat brought up in a recent discussion. I was like, why do we have to have angst in our superhero movies now? I don't know. It's just, and I don't know. I felt like the Tobey Maguire films were just much more fun than the Andrew Garfield films.
Well, Peter Parker is sort of an angsty character, but the reason a lot of people like him is that he gets over it. He uses his powers to better the world for it, and just kind of sitting around. That's why we like Spider-Man. And the Andrew Garfield films, they never got, because the third one got canceled because now they're rebooting it. But they never got to that point where he could finally go, all right, I'm using my powers to better people's lives and stuff like that. They spent so much time on origins and fathers and stuff like that, is that they never got that chance. Whereas in I want to say the Sam Raimi films is that he got the origin pretty quickly. Well, I don't say pretty quickly, like half of the first film, but he got it out of the way, and then you had the time jump of him like going around and fighting crime and things like that. But Peter Parker's actually, if you look at his history, he's kind of an angsty character. He's quit being Spider-Man like at least 3 or 4 times.
I don't know. That's just, I don't know. But Tobey Maguire is your final answer, I guess?
Yeah, Tobey Maguire's my final. Unless you want to go with those old 70s live action ones, which I think get a lot of undeserved hate, but that's a discussion for another time.
I gotta ask, did you ever see the Japanese live action Spider-Man series?
Yeah, I did, and it's the most confusing thing in the world.
Like many things from Japan. Why does he have a Megazord? Because Japan. It's like law here. Alright. That's all the Ask the Geek questions that we have for this week. As always, you can send them to us through the email at billysmith@channelawesome.com. We love getting your questions. Please do send them in. You know, maybe yours will get read on the air and answered. So, yeah. And with that, kind of a light room this week. So we're going to jump right into the headlines, starting this week with Brian. So, Brian, take it away.
Hello, and welcome to the Multiverse Headlines. I apologize again this week because, well, I don't really have anything in the comic book world, but I do have some somber news I don't wish to report, but feel like it's my duty to sort of spread the word out. There was a man named Lenny B. Robinson. He lived in Montgomery County, Maryland, here in the United States. He had a good amount of money on him, and he used that money to dress up as Batman and turned his Lamborghini into a sort of makeshift Batmobile. While doing this, he would visit sick children in hospitals, delivering comics and toys, and got the nickname of Route 29 Batman, as that's where he lived and traveled the most part. Sadly, Lenny was driving his Lamborghini down and had some malfunctioning issues to it and had to pull over. A car then struck the Lamborghini and killed him at the scene. We wish all of our thoughts and friends and family to Lenny Robinson, who was obviously a big-time Batman and geek fan and used his time and money to help children out in hospitals. Something that we should all try to do, I think, at one point or another, and remember where these heroes sort of come from and what they mean to a lot of people. So we'll miss you, Lenny. You were one of the good ones.
That's all the headlines we have for this week. We're going to take a quick music break. When we come back, tabletop games. They've exploded over the last several years. We're going to look at why. Stay tuned. We got a lot of fun stuff ahead.
Gosh, I really hope they haven't exploded. That could hurt someone.
Space, you say you need space until you find your place, until you say you're okay, okay, space. Give you space. Things have turned to waste. I want you to be okay, okay. None of us can be hurt by the truth. You can only let it get to you. Time, we may need more time. Life has lost its rhyme and left reason behind. I hoped I could prove that we both could move just can't be hurt by the truth. You can only let it get to you. One fragile thing, this fragile mess. How beautiful, how delicate. You live, you love, you give it. I live, I love, but I give up. Space, I will give you space, and things will be okay. Things will be
All right, and we are back. And this week we are going to be discussing something that we don't really get a chance to cover a lot on the show, and which is a crying shame because it's such a huge aspect of nerddom. And it was brought on by Bryan going to stay in Japan and basically playing and running tabletop game demos all day. So he kind of has the itch, which I've instructed him to consult Skyblaze for a cure to reduce the swelling and itch after the show. But in the meantime, we're going to take advantage of that enthusiasm and discuss the recent explosion of tabletop games over the last several years. Tabletop gaming has always been, a big part of geekdom with stuff like, Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering. But, it seems to me like over the last 10 years, especially with things like Kickstarter, that the tabletop games market has just kind of, taken steroids and exploded. So is that just me, or am I just noticing something that's kind of always been there?
I think you're starting to notice it a little bit more now because information's more readily available now. If that makes any sense.
It's the homebrew game. What's referred to as homebrew games have always existed since the beginning of role playing. What's happening now is that because of things like the explosion of self-publishing and the ability to publish things on the internet and share them, and things like RPG.net, which does reviews of these things and will rate them and things, it's a lot easier to get hold of these things and exchange tips on how to go about creating a game, how to tune it so it's right, how to get players. You can play over Skype. There's various tools that you can use for playing online, Roll D20 and so on. So it's a lot easier now for those games to be both created and played.
Now, Skyblaze, you actually run a gaming group out of your home, don't you?
Yes, I'm in two, actually.
Now, what do you guys play?
Well, the one that I'm in at the University of Sheffield, we just finished fairly recently because it's end of term now. But we were in a Doctor Who game, the Doctor Who, the recent Doctor Who system, Adventures in Time and Space. The one that that a friend of mine is running on Fridays is using the Marvel Universe diceless system.
Diceless.
Diceless.
How does that work?
It's resource allocation. You have a certain number of... They're referred to as stones. You can use pennies or dice or whatever the hell you want. And you put a certain amount of effort into it. So say, for example, you want to punch someone. Say, I want to punch someone with 5. And you've... if they're actively defending, then if they've got a defense of 4, then 1 point gets through.
Oh.
You see?
So it's probably one of the only times where the phrase "you haven't got the stones for it" is used both unironically and without any kind of insult.
People still laugh anyway because role players, ladies and gentlemen.
Now the Doctor Who game, I always kind of raise my eyebrows at Doctor Who role playing games because I always imagine a scenario where everybody fights over who gets to be the Doctor.
Yeah, I got around that one because I was running the one that was happening at NODSOC, which is the University Role Playing Society that I'm in. Everyone was playing the Doctor.
Oh, just like different incarnations?
Yep.
And it didn't...
How'd you guys get anything done without arguing with yourselves?
They didn't, which is why it was hilarious.
Totally in character, in other words.
Yep.
Okay. Now, Brian, you recently went to San Japan. Am I correct on?
Yeah, San Japan is San Antonio's local anime con here. Well, they've actually sort of started to expand out than just anime itself. This is actually my 3rd time volunteering for them, but this is my first time I volunteered with my buddy Tall Chris to do tabletop. And what we sort of did there is that we had a budget. We tried to collect as many games we thought would be, sort of fun to play and for big groups. And then we all sat down over like a weekend, learned how to play these games, and then we would then go out and teach these games to anyone who's willing to want to teach, or if they just wanted to play, we'd allow them to just play any games. And then we had a couple of tournaments that weren't as successful as we wanted to be because somebody, I'm not going to mention names, forgot to bring the games, but that's con life.
What sort of games did you run while you were there?
Well, we ran, unfortunately, like, we as a group didn't get a chance to run some, like, the RPGs and stuff like that, mostly because I'm not sure how far you can get on RPG, because during a con, people are going to the panels, they're going to the artist alley or dealer's room and things like that. But late night, we actually, I think, were able to run a couple of independent run RPGs. Like, name escapes me at the moment. But we were mainly dealing with we collected a very different variety of board, card, like shuffle type games and all sorts of things. I'll list off the ones I can remember that I was running. Smash Up was one that was run. It's called a shuffle based game where you actually build a deck of cards from 2 different factions. A la like I'm ninja pirates and that guy's zombie robots, stuff like that.
Zombie robot. I would love to know how that works.
It's actually a pretty fun game. It was one of the games I actually ran a tournament for because I was the one that knew the rules, so I was able to kind of keep everyone together. Then we ran things like we had Zombie Dice, which is a dice rolling game of peer pressure, basically, because you're trying not to get shot 3 times.
I've seen this played. It's really funny.
Yeah, it's always like, oh, I've been shot twice. I'm gonna pass on. No, you want to keep going. Come on, keep going. You never know. I'm gonna keep going. I'm dead. Ha! There was Castle Panic was another game I ran for a while where it's a co-op game. It's you versus the game, where you're trying to protect your castle from hordes of hordes of trolls.
No.
Goblins and something else. I forget now.
I love how you had to correct yourself from hordes of geeks to hordes of trolls, as if there's any practical difference.
Right. You said that, not me. Then we had things like Flux, where we had different versions of Flux, where that's a game where the rules change literally on a dime, and that's sort of a card game. Someone brought in, what was it, Elder Sign? I think someone taught Elder Sign. I didn't get a chance to play it because I was too busy.
It's very good.
That's like the condensed version of Arkham Horror, which I have played, which is a game that is abundantly complicated and so frustrating I don't like to play it. Because that's another you versus the game, and it's a Cthulhu game, so you lose.
But how do you lose?
that's how do you lose? How do you die? But there was a newer one that we actually discovered randomly that we haven't seen other people play. It was called The Battle at Kimbler's Cascade. And this game is so unique. It is a tabletop version of the old side-scrolling shooting space games like Galaga.
Oh, cool.
And like 1980, well, like 1941 and stuff like that. I think it's pretty new because we haven't seen anyone else play it. So when we got it and we tried it out to teach people, we just kind of sat there. We didn't first time we played it wrong. Like absolutely, the point system, you can actually get like 100 some odd points. We got like 20 because we didn't know what we were doing, but we were just having a great time shooting things. And there's a player versus player aspect. So like, oh, that guy's doing well. Well, I'm going to shoot him. So that's what we did over the convention, and that's what got this sort of collected into my mind about it, is that the diversity of everything that's sort of happened, and that we were able to collect all these sort of different type of games and just sort of sit there and learn and play them, and just thinking about all those different types that now exist in the world. Like, I'm going to be getting the Ghostbusters game from Kickstarter because I helped kickstart it, and that's a tile game where you move around tiles and change it up and fight ghosts. It's like, this is just almost amazing to me. Like, there was one of those just moments of like it clicked in my head going, this is great that like this has sort of expanded upon itself out. Like, and I love pen and paper RPGs, don't get me wrong, but with the way we've sort of expanded out, like I imagine this is the people who would make their own games at home are now making games for everybody.
I remember like when I was a kid, and I wanted to play like, I want to play like a Star Wars like type role-playing game. So, we just wound up making up our own rules on like notebook paper, and it's like, God, now this is like writ large. All the people, all the kids that did that, when I was young, now they're adults, and like, we can actually get capital to actually make these things and, have them, be high quality products here.
Mm-hmm. And it isn't difficult. There's a couple of guys in NODSOC, the University Role Playing Society. NODSOC, incidentally, stands for Not Only Dungeons and Dragons Society. So there you go. There's been at least 3 professionally printed, homebrewed role-playing games that have been produced by a few guys at our society.
And the thing is like, there is definitely like huge communities for tabletop gaming, and Brian, something I want to bring up that is up your alley, and probably would be up Skyblaze's too. But a couple years ago, I discovered a comic book / magazine called Knights of the Dinner Table. That
they've been around for years.
Oh yeah, long time. But for those who don't know what I'm talking about, like I said, it's a combination comic book / magazine. The comic book portion of it is all about this community that it centers around this game called Hackmaster, which is basically a poor man's Dungeons and Dragons. But then the magazine half of it is all these articles about various games, not just ones that are put up by Steve Jackson Press, but other ones too. There's all these articles written by people who run game stores or run games communities, and I think both of you, if you can check it out, I think both of you would really enjoy it. I don't even play a bunch of tabletop games, and it's in my subscription box every month.
Or you can just go to rpg.net and find exactly the same thing for no money.
Exactly. Like, the internet is the biggest helpful thing of exploding RPGs and tabletop gaming and card gaming. Like, that has been the biggest ally for them. Because, going to show my age, back in the day, you would just go to your local store, and maybe someone would have a flyer up, and maybe you would be able to hook up with them, or maybe someone in school, and you guys would get together and play. But it was always maybe your group of friends and never really expand out onto them. Now, here we are, digital age, rpg.net, boardgamegeek.com, which I love the sites, but man, they look like they haven't updated since 1998. No offense to their looks. But at the same time, you probably don't need to because it's just so perfect the way it is. Except Board Game Geek is way too confusing now because of all the different games. But now you can just go like, hey, look at all this stuff, and hey, I got local people being played at this place. You want to join? Like, it's so like better connected now, and that's helped to expand it out, because now one gaming group becomes 10 gaming groups, and those 10 gaming groups become 10 gaming groups, and you're all sort of having fun and what have you, and then you can join your local game shop or mostly comic book stores because they're actually one and the same now.
We've been noticing at Nodsock that year on year for the past kind of 5 or 6 years, our membership has been expanding a lot. I mean, obviously, first time you have a session, a bucket load of people will show up, and not all of them will stay, but enough of them do, and enough of them will come back again next term, and then it just ends up with like greater and greater numbers of people, and you've got the guys who are not students anymore but have been there since forever. Hi, that's me. And then you've got the kind of guys who have just started university this year, who are just trying to get into all of this, and we show them the way.
Something I kind of want to add into this, to the sort of spinning off the internet connection thing. But there's also a bunch of tools being released now that are actually fully self-contained RPG-run systems that you can find on like Steam. They're actually, I use the term game because, shit, what other term can I use? But they're really more tool sets to run Dungeons and Dragons games online, and you just connect to a server and you can run your game all within this system. And this goes back as far as, I think it was either Neverwinter Nights or Baldur's Gate. I have to go back and look up which one. But the game was released. It had its own campaign, its own story-written game, but also had tool sets released where you could build your own entire campaign, and it would actually run off of the then current rules of Dungeons and Dragons. And you can find all these different tools online, not just on Steam, but heck, you can find online game systems for just about any game you care to name. I think and not just role-playing games too. I mean, you guys remember when we played an online game of Cards Against Humanity a couple months ago?
Well, I wasn't there for that, but yeah.
Cards Against Humanities, god damn that game.
Which I think that's something that we kind of need to talk about, and that's sort of how when you play some of these games, be it Dungeons and Dragons or Cards Against Humanity or whatever, you always wind up with these wild out there stories, or how some player got particularly creative on how to pass an obstacle, and so the noise that comes from Skyblaze's microphone tells me that she's got one she wants to tell. So I'm going to turn the floor over to her for now.
The funny stories tend to come from well, at least one of them comes from a role-playing game I was in. It was a Dungeons and Dragons game. And it's not a mechanics joke, it's a role-playing joke. My character and my friend Alex's character had been kind of flirting with each other and were becoming quite close to getting into an actual in-character relationship. We'd just come out of a fight where his character had very nearly died. And during the fight, one of the other characters had cast a telepathic bond spell on the entire party. So, end of the fight, afterwards, Alex's character comes up to my character and says, can we talk? And we go off some distance away. And he's like, right, so we keep dancing around this subject, but are we actually gonna, do this? Are we gonna have this relationship? And my character was like, we shouldn't be having this conversation right now. And he was like, oh my god, you always do this. And I was like, no, the telepathic bond is still up. They can hear us. At which point, in Alex's character's head, one of the other characters, who his character did not get on with at all, said, very smooth. At which point he responded, you shut up! You shut up and die in an actual fire! Turn this off! And the character who'd cast the spell went, okay, it's off. Went, thank you. Wait, you said that over the bond. Nah! During all of this, our GM was creased over, pissing himself laughing. And it took a good 10 minutes before he actually recovered enough to actually continue with the game.
I've got one from a D&D group that I was with for a short time. We were in between Dark Heresy campaigns, so we decided to play around at D&D. And two of the players that were in this group they were like, I swear to God, they were like a modern day Laurel and Hardy. They just, you put them together and they would come up with the most off the wall shit. So one of them decides that he's going to play a half giant, and the other said that he was going to play, and hand to Bible, these are his precise words, a midget dwarf.
Okay.
And that's not a tautology. He was literally he was like you know, if the average height of a dwarf is like 5 feet tall, he was 3 feet tall. Said midget dwarf wielded two double-headed axes, wore spiked armor that if he curled up in the right way, he would actually become like a spiked sphere, and primitive roller skates. And they came up with their own version of the fastball special, which was basically the dwarf would curl up into a ball with his axes sticking out of the sides. The giant would then reach down, spin him around on his finger until he got a good spin going, and then roll him at the enemy like a twirling bowling ball. And he called it the whirling dervish special.
Oh, good.
and our GM fucking hated it, because anytime he tried to sick a horde on us, you know, a large group of mooks on us, these two guys just look at each other and just go, whirling dervish, whirling dervish.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'll give you one of my very early experiences at D&D with my group of friends here. So we had like the whole meeting process, like, oh, you meet in an inn, and then the inn gets attacked, blah blah blah. So what happens was and this is how it happens almost in this order. One of the enemies threw a firebomb at me, caught me on fire. One of my friends said, all right, don't worry, I got this. I'm going to leap over that table to get him. Tries to leap over the table, fails, so he falls face first on the table. My other friend, she goes, don't worry, guys, I've got this. I'm going to stab him. She didn't draw her weapon, so she tried to stab him with a bottle and missed. So the next phrase, verbatim, is what happened. She starts with her. She goes, oh, I missed. My friend, I fell. Me, I'm on fire! We were in terms of like our group, we weren't like we were like below Monty Python, like how terrible we were as a group of adventurers. And even as we got better at the game, our adventuring was still terrible.
Oh my God, I have actually played in a game that was based around Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and I have never laughed so hard in my life. John, you're kind of sitting over there not really saying much of anything. Any tabletop stories you have to add?
Well, I'm trying to think about it, because I actually haven't played as many tabletop games as the rest of you, and it's not because I don't want to, but one game that I did play a fair bit of, despite the fact that, one, it took up all of my money when I was playing it, just sucked me dry, and two, I was terrible at it, and I'm still not much better at it to this day, is a little collectible card game called Magic the Gathering.
Oh, no.
But the game is addictive, and buying the cards is addictive, and having the cards is addictive. And
I have the same problem with a game called Yu-Gi-Oh!
You know what? I gotta tell you this story. Let me tell you about my buddy Chip. Okay, this guy, he's big into both Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering.
Oh dear God!
And here's the thing. Here's the thing. This guy, I don't know how he managed to pull it off on his budget, because the dude works as a delivery boy for a sushi joint, which, you know, it's probably the only job on this earth that pays less than mine, which is pizza delivery. So make of that what you will. But he has like binders full of cards that are worth like multiple hundreds of dollars. And he, like, I don't know how the fuck he does this, but like, I know why he's able to get away and live as comfortably as he does with the job that he has, because if he is ever at any point he needs extra money, he just goes to the local card shop, sells like one card, and he has enough money for the next like 3 months to pay all of his bills. It galls me that he could, that you know, it impresses me and galls me at the same time that he's basically able to, you know, make this much money off what is essentially a piece of cardboard.
Oh God.
If that's not an indictment on our economic system, I don't know what is.
My favorite Magic related story ever in terms of getting a rare card. You can find this video on YouTube. I don't know who the guy is. Those of you who play Magic will understand the significance of it or have any significant...
Are you about to say the words Black Lotus?
Maybe. See, this is the thing. This guy managed to acquire through, I don't know, a warehouse sale, a storage room sale, a contract with Satan. I don't know how he did it. He managed to acquire a couple of boxes of, like, unopened, completely mint Alpha Edition Magic the Gathering cards.
Fuck.
Okay, now for those of us who don't know what that means.
Alpha was the very first set of Magic cards that was released in 1993. This was when the game first came out. The second set was beta, and after that they started doing like 3rd edition, 4th edition, etc. Alpha was the original set of cards. These are the oldest cards in this game in print. There are some crazy cards in Alpha and Beta because back in the early days they didn't have a very good handle on how to properly balance the game. There are some incredibly overpowered cards from the first few years of Magic the Gathering. There's a combination of 4 cards that can let you win a game of Magic on turn 1 if you get them all. Very first
Fuck you,
turn.
Exodia.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Very first turn, if you get, what is it? It's a forest, no, it's a mountain, a Black Lotus, Fireball, and I forget the 4th card, it's a green enchantment. You get these 4 cards, you can cast a 20-point Fireball on your opponent on turn 1. Of course, it requires you to have some of the rarest cards in the game, but that's beside the point. So this guy, he gets his camera together, and he decides he's going to open these packs one at a time, but he's going to do it smart. He puts on gloves because he doesn't even want to get fingerprints on these cards because they have not been touched since they were printed. So he opens them one pack at a time, and he's building the drama, too, because he's got them face down, and he knows the order. Like, the topmost card as he turns it over is going to be common, and the rare is going to be on the bottom. And he's just doing this one pack at a time just to see what he gets. And he keeps joking and, like, halfway hoping. He's like, maybe there'll be a Black Lotus in here somewhere. I don't know. But it's the very last pack. He finally hits the last card of the last pack, and it is a mint condition, untouched, Alpha Edition Black Lotus. And, like...
There's your retirement fund right there.
Yeah, he starts, like, his hands start shaking, and you can hear it in his voice. Like, he actually, I think, starts crying when he sees that card. It is that valuable and that rare, and I don't think you would find another, like, completely untouched mint condition version out in the wild because, you know, these things were played with by most people. The few that are even still in existence.
That's like a religious experience right there. That's like finding nerd Jesus.
Pretty nerd Jesus. What were you doing in my Magic cards? Jesus lives in the heart of the cards.
I do have a Yu-Gi-Oh story.
Oh, please,
I was
Shanti.
playing with Tony, my husband, and we have a reasonable selection of cards, but it's nothing magical. We have a few valuable cards, and I happened to pick up a card called Elector, Sovereign of Birds, and put it in my deck. And I found this in one of the Yu-Gi-Oh mangas. And we were playing, and Tony manages to summon a card called the Montage Dragon. Now, the Montage Dragon gets attack power based on how it's summoned. So I think it's the level of each card of 3. You have to use 3 cards and put them in the graveyard in order to summon it. And the level of those 3 cards added together and times, and I think times by 100 is its attack power. And he'd used 3 really high-level monsters to summon this thing, so it had like something stupid like 9,000 attack power. Most high-level monsters in the game are somewhere around 2,500 to 3,000. So he was like, "Ahaha, I'm going to annihilate you." And then I was looking at my deck, going, "Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, I'm going to die." And I looked at my hand and went, "Hang on." And I looked at his cards and I went, "Do they both have the same elemental attribute? Your 2 cards on the field?" He went, "Yeah." "Oh, good. That means I can automatically summon Elector, Sovereign of Birds without tributing another monster, and the special effect means that I can negate the special effect of a different card. In this case, your Montage Dragon, which means that all its attack power reverts to 0. And then I attack you, and it dies.
And you're still married.
He's more like,
he
well
was like-
played, sir. Well played.
And he was like, what? To do what? Ma! And I was like, yes! And I was still a rookie player at this point, because we'd only just started playing the game together. So he was just like slack-jawed, and I was like doing a celebratory jog around the room going, yes!
You went
was very
into
happy.
an episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! And you became the main character at that point.
I know! It was great!
Yami Yugi was your spirit animal.
He's like, how is she gonna get out of this? She's like, ta-da! You're like, oh my god!
And then the Funimation announcer comes in and says, come back next week.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's about. We got to kind of start wrapping this up, but yeah, this has definitely been a really fun discussion. So yeah, why don't you guys chime in the comments and tell us what some of your favorite tabletop or pen and paper games are, and maybe share a couple of your amusing stories. And yeah, but that's about all the time that we have for Nerd to the Third Power this week. Thank you as always for tuning in. Come back next week. We'll be discussing Hitman, Agent 47, and the most we know about it right now is it's probably gonna be better than Pixels was.
Well, I mean,
This is not saying a great deal.
a literal repeated slap in the face with a brick would apparently be better than Pixels was.
Yeah, I still hate you, by the way.
It's okay, your hate keeps me warm at night.
All right. And so, yeah, thank you as always for tuning in. I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm Skyblaze. Sorry, I forgot Cat wasn't here.
I'm Brian.
And I'm John, and I remembered Kat wasn't here.
All right, we'll see you next week. Taka, play us out.